Why did Thanos wait so long to collect the Infinity Stones instead of going down to Earth himself in 2012? When the Earth was attacked, Loki led the Chitauri on a crusade against the planet, with the hopes of collecting the Tesseract for Thanos and taking the Earth for himself in the process. Later, we learn that Thanos commissioned the services of Ronan the Accuser to collect the Power Stone for him rather than going around the galaxy personally. After all, Thanos knew where the space and the Power Stones were. He had the army necessary to go down and take them, yet he sent cronies to do it for him first. So today, let's discuss Thanos' strategy and what took him so long to actually get into the fight himself rather than sending others to do his bidding for him. Something to remember about Thanos is the flow of information, how Thanos was careful to control the flow of information and what leaked to the larger galaxy. On the surface, the Chitauri invasion of Earth looked like a futile attempt from an exiled Asgardian to claim a planet for himself. It was completely within Loki's character to march on a planet with the intention of taking it for himself personally, especially when the wider galaxy learns about his history with Thor and his feud with Odin. Nobody would have looked any more closely at the invasion, but if Thanos had gone down personally, people would have taken note instantly, and everyone would have figured out why he went down to Earth for a very different purpose than simple conquest. If Thanos had personally invaded, then yes, he may have beaten the Avengers, especially as they were in 2012, but the rest of the galaxy, including Asgard, would have had to ask him why. Odin especially would have figured out exactly what the Mad Titan was after right then, safeguarding and protecting the Tesseract for eons before hiding it in Tonsberg. Odin knew exactly what the Infinity Stones were, and we have evidence of this across several different films. First, in the Dark World, Odin leads Jane and Thor to a library. He tells them that the ether was only one of 6 incredibly powerful artifacts to present as a liquid rather than a physical item. We also know that when Sif and Volstagg go to the Collector and give him the Reality Stone, they specifically tell him that it is because it is unwise to keep 2 stones so close together. So if Volstagg and Sif knew what the Tesseract was, and that the ether itself was an Infinity Stone, then Odin certainly knew this as well. So now, we have to look at Thanos' perspective, because if he had done this, then he would have just inadvertently declared war with Odin and the entirety of the realm of Asgard. Furthermore, we know that at this point, the Ancient One was also alive, and it's entirely possible that the Ancient One would also have figured out Thanos' trap and plan as well. She likely could have moved the Time Stone somewhere else entirely. We don't currently know how much the Ancient One knew about the other 5 stones, but since Wong refers to the Eye of Agamotto as an Infinity Stone, and since he tells Tony the history of the stones in Infinity War, it seems like the Ancient One was well aware of what the stones were. Whether or not she knew the whereabouts of the other 5 stones is not clear, but we do know that at some point she looked into the future to see what Doctor Strange would end up becoming, though she couldn't see beyond the point of her own death. Given how much she knew when talking to the Hulk in Endgame though, it's reasonable to conclude that she would have seen Thanos' intentions as well, and this would have made it much harder for him to get to the Time Stone. We can even go further though, and ask what would have happened if Thanos went to Earth to get both stones at the same time. If this was the case, then he would have had to split his attention between the 2 of them. The Avengers would be guarding the Tesseract, and the Sorcerers would be protecting the Time Stone, so Thanos would have to pick one to start with, and then turn his attention to the other. This would have wasted precious time, and given how easily the Sorcerers are able to sling ring themselves around the planet, it's entirely likely that they would have hidden the Time Stone away somewhere else, which Thanos may have never been able to uncover. This is all before we take into account the most important detail in the plan of Thanos, the one key detail that held him back for so long. Thanos needed to find all 6 of them before he could start closing in. Once he tipped his hand, he only had a very short window of time to get to the stones before even just one of them slipped through his grasp, which is why the order in which he collected the stones was very deliberate. At this time, Thanos did not have the location of the Soul Stone, and it can be inferred that Gamora was still looking for it at this point in time. In Infinity War, Gamora says that she found the map to the Soul Stone and that she burned it so that Thanos would never find it. And since Peter didn't know about this, we know that it happened before 2014 when she joined the Guardians. Thanos, however, didn't learn that she had lied until much later, so he only started collecting the stones once he knew that he could get the information out of Gamora. From here, he still had to know that he could get to the Soul Stone, and it helped that the world around him kept changing in various ways that would aid his journey. We know that Odin was still an incredibly well-respected warlord and a warrior, and the 9 realms fell under his control at one point, and as we mentioned, the Ancient One is thousands of years old, the most powerful sorcerer of the age, and arguably one of the most powerful to ever live, simply based on her experience alone. we know that Thanos struggled against Doctor Strange on Titan, and Strange was only a few years into his training. Only a few years, and he fought for the fate of the Time Stone. A brief detail that's important to mention is that we don't know how long Doctor Strange actually spent fighting Dormammu in 2016, and it's been theorized that he took years to finally break Dormammu down. But either way, this is a speck of time in comparison to the Ancient One's several hundred years of study and practice. She could have also been backed by other sorcerers, so the Ancient One and Odin dying were both incredibly helpful to Thanos and his plans. It's also important to mention that without knowing where the Soul Stone was, the rest does not matter. Thanos can't actually capture the 5 stones and then sit on them until he finds the Soul Stone, without the rest of the galaxy retaliating against him. He would have almost certainly faced a massive onslaught from everyone in the galaxy once they figured out his plan and what he wanted. And even with 5 Infinity Stones, he had to look for the Soul Stone while fighting off everyone in the galaxy at once, something that may have been impossible. So let's now talk about exactly why he chose this order of the stones. Why did Thanos chart his course as he did? Well, let's break it down. First, Thanos went for the Power Stone, and this is for 2 reasons. Number 1, this was the most heavily fortified stone of the 6, as it had the entire Nova Corps and planet of Xandar standing in its way. Therefore, he had to employ ambush tactics, in his only hope of laying waste to the entirety of the Nova Corps. And the easiest way to do this was best served with shock and awe, surprise, and brutality. If he had gone for the other stones, the Nova Corps would have been on high alert and would have made his attempt to capture the Power Stone extremely difficult. Secondly, we know that in the comics the Power Stone can amplify the power of the other 5 stones, sort of like a super battery that creates a loop of power between itself and the other stones. This superconductor makes it much more versatile in what it can do, so each stone would become stronger once he had the Power Stone added to the collection. Next, he would go for the Space Stone, which he learned was aboard the Statesman when Thor and his refugees escaped from the destroyed Asgard. Thor was in a particularly vulnerable state, not just because he wasn't on solid ground, but because there was no weather in space, and Thanos likely knew this. Even if he could have summoned lightning, he would blow the ship apart and doom everyone. So in this environment, Thor was extremely vulnerable. At the same time, he sends his Black Order to Earth in order to ambush the Avengers. At this time, Earth is far less advanced and protected than the other worlds. They do not have any direct lines of communication to somewhere like Xandar, and they are very ununiformed about what is going on in the rest of the galaxy. The Avengers are broken apart. Effectively, there's no galactic news cycle that goes to Earth, so Thanos could take this covertly. This is also why he saved Earth for last, and sent his minions ahead of him, since this would tip off Gamora and the Collector. So now, Thanos has to do 2 things: get the Reality Stone, and get Gamora in order to find the Soul Stone. And luckily, he knew Gamora well enough to know that as soon as she learned what he was up to, she would step in to stop him immediately. This is why he had an illusion ready on Nowhere, which made it look like she was ambushing him, because he knew her too well. Once he used the Reality Stone to lure her in, he thought that the Black Order could handle Earth. But of course, he was wrong about Tony Stark. What's most important about Thanos' planning, however, is that the best plans aren't laid out from beginning to end. Instead, the best plans are a web where Thanos can monitor every possible outcome and create a contingency for every obstacle. This is why Thanos is dangerous. He did not want the Black Order to fail, but he was prepared in case they did. And this was the biggest hitch in his otherwise well-established order of operations, his one fatal flaw. The Soul Stone, however, required a leap of faith, as he did not know what he would be walking into. But with the power of 3 Infinity Stones at his side, he was confident that he could face anything that the galaxy had to throw at him. And in the end, Thanos was right. From here, he was ready to reconvene on Titan to meet with the Black Order, so visiting Earth wasn't originally a part of this plan. But by that point, it was too late. He already had set so many pieces into place that there was no way to truly beat him, not without the United Avengers standing against him. But the Earth was left undefended after the division of the Avengers, and Thanos and his plan worked out perfectly. But anyway, friends, what do you think of why Thanos waited so long to collect the stones, and why he was afraid of tipping his hand to Odin and the Ancient One? And as a big question, if he had attacked Earth in 2012, would he have been successful? As always, my friends, Hulk smash that subscribe button for more Marvel lore, and have a great day.